What if I told you that some of the quintessentially Italian surnames in southern Italy are hiding a Spanish secret? It's true. For centuries, a huge part of southern Italy, which would later be known as the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, was under Iberian rule. And this wasn't some brief chapter in a history book. It was a long, deeply rooted presence that reshaped culture, language, and even the names people carried. Today, we're going on a genealogical hunt to uncover the Spanish surnames that just might rewrite your family's history. For so many of us with roots in southern Italy, our family tree eventually hits a brick wall. We see a name, and then we just assume it's always been as Italian as pasta on a Sunday. But the real story is much more complex and, honestly, more interesting. The history of these names is a story of empires, soldiers, administrators, and nobles who crossed the Mediterranean and left a permanent mark. So stick with me, because by the end of this, you just might look at your own last name in a whole new light. First things first, let's get our history straight, because it's the key to unlocking this whole surname puzzle. When we say Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, most people think of the state that existed from 1816 to 1861, right before Italy unified. But the Spanish connection to southern Italy goes back way further. The story really kicks off in 1282 with an event called the Sicilian Vespers. It was a massive rebellion that booted the French rulers out of Sicily and brought in Peter III of Aragon, a king from the powerful Iberian dynasty. From that point on, for about 500 years, Sicily and Naples were governed by a series of dynasties with roots in the Iberian Peninsula. First, the Crown of Aragon, then Habsburg Spain, and later, the Spanish Bourbons. We're talking about the same global Spanish empire that was colonizing the Americas. And this wasn't some long-distance relationship. Spanish viceroys were on the ground, Spanish garrisons were stationed in big cities, and Spanish administrators basically ran the government. Noble families from Spain were granted land and titles. And just as important, regular people, soldiers, merchants, and clerks, moved from Spain to southern Italy, especially to cities like Palermo and Naples, looking for a better life. This long, continuous flow of people between Spain and southern Italy created a cultural melting pot. It influenced food, architecture, local dialects, and most importantly, for our investigation, it left behind a trail of surnames. So with the scene set, let's start the hunt. What clues are we looking for? Our first set of clues are the most direct, surnames that just sound Spanish. These are the names that likely arrived with the Spanish-born settlers and managed to survive with only minor changes. The classic Spanish patronymics, the ones meaning son of, are a huge giveaway, especially those ending in EZ. Now, to be clear, these names aren't nearly as common in Italy as they are in Spain or Latin America, but they do exist, and finding one in your family tree is a major clue. What are we talking about? Names like Perez or Perez, meaning son of Pedro. You might also find Alvarez or Alvarez, and Ramirez or Ramirez. While they may not be on every street corner, their presence in old records points to a definite Spanish connection. The same goes for Diaz or Diaz, and one of the most Spanish surnames in the world, Garcia. Finding one of these in a southern Italian family tree is a pretty exciting flag. And don't get hung up on perfect spelling. A local clerk in a tiny Sicilian village in the 1700s wasn't going to be a stickler for spelling rules. An S could easily become a Z or vice versa. Focus on the root of the name. If you find a southern Italian ancestor named Gonzalez, the odds are good that the name didn't just appear out of thin air. It probably traveled across the sea. Okay, this is where our detective works get really fun. Some Spanish names didn't stay Spanish. Over generations, they became Italianized. They adopted to local dialects and pronunciations until their origins were almost completely hidden. This is the secret history that many families don't even know they carry. Let's look at one of the most fascinating, though debated. Examples of the name Cusmano or Cusumano. It sounds completely Sicilian, right? Well, some genealogical theories suggest that it could be an Italianized version of the noble Spanish name Guzman. You can just imagine a Spanish official named Guzman settling in Palermo, and over time his kids and grandkids, speaking the local dialect, have their name recorded as Cusmano, because it was just easy to say and spell. And just like that, a Spanish legacy gets an Italian disguise. Another debated but interesting theory connects to the name Garcia. While finding the name Garcia itself is a clear clue, some researchers have proposed a Sicilian adaptation, Ingrazia. It's a niche hypothesis, but it suggests that Ingrazia could be a local evolution of Garcia transformed over centuries. Then you have names like Alonso, which is found in the South and is a variant of Spanish Alonso. Both names, however, can trace their roots back even further to old Germanic names, so it's a shared heritage. More direct is a name like Spaniolo or Spagnuolo. This one is basically a historical label. It means the Spaniard. This surname was likely given as a nickname to an ancestor who came from Spain, and the name just stuck. It's a centuries-old signpost pointing directly to a family's origin story. Are any of these names starting to sound familiar? If you're seeing a name from your own family tree, or if you have a story about a Spanish connection, drop it in the comments below. It's amazing how our individual family histories come together to tell this much bigger story. And hey, if you're enjoying this genealogical detective work, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss our next investigation. And by the way, we're going to be doing some fascinating videos on how to use AI in the coming weeks. And they left their own distinct mark on surnames. The most obvious one is the surname Catalano. It's widespread in southern Italy, especially Sicily, and it means simply the Catalan. Like Spaniolo, it was a name given to identify where someone came from. An ancestor who moved from Barcelona to Palermo could easily have been nicknamed the Catalan, and the name passed down. The influence also shows up in the nobility. You have names like the Aragona of Aragon, which is a pretty clear indicator. Some ancient Sicilian families like Aliata became powerful and held titles under Spanish and Bourbon rule, weaving them into the Siberian world. There are also fascinating family legends, like the one for the surname Saladino. While many scholars link it to the famous Sultan, some family historians trace their origin to a knight from Navarre, an old Iberian kingdom who settled in Palermo in the 1390s. It's a great example of how a name can hold multiple competing stories. And just for an example, my grandmother's name, Piramalo, originally came from Spain around the same time, 1350s. So, you've got a name, you've got a clue. Now what? How do you, the historical detective, take the next step and solve your own family's case? Here's a quick toolkit to get you started. First, embrace spelling variations. The idea of one correct spelling for a name is pretty modern. Back in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, literacy wasn't universal, and priests wrote down the names how they heard them. So, when you're searching, be flexible. Try an S instead of a Z, or look for versions with or without the final vowel. Second, go to the source. The key documents are the civil records, which in southern Italy usually start around 1809 or 1816. Even better are the Catholic parish records, birth, marriages, and deaths, which could go back to late 1500s or 1600s. In some areas, though not everywhere. That's where you'll find the oldest versions of your family name. Third, remember that context is everything. A Spanish-sounding name is a strong clue, but it isn't a final verdict. Your case gets much stronger, however, if you find a name like Ramirez constantly appearing in a Sicilian town from 1750, and you learn that the town had a Spanish military or administrative presence. That's connecting the dots. Finally, use this as a guide, not a gospel. Surname history is complicated. This video is your starting point, the map to a hidden treasure. The real adventure is taking these clues and starting your own investigation. The story of Spanish surnames in southern Italy is a powerful reminder that history isn't just something in dusty old books. It's alive. It's written in our DNA and in the names we carry. For centuries, southern Italy was a crossroads of empires, and the evidence is still there, waiting to be found in old documents and on the branches of our family trees. Names like Perez, Guzmano, and Catalano are more than just words. They are echoes of a forgotten past connecting families in Italy, America, Argentina, and Australia back to the vibrant, complex world of Spanish-ruled southern Italy. Every family name tells a story, and understanding that story is a way of understanding ourselves. This is just one of many layers. There are also German, Greek, Albanian, and Norman stories to tell in Italian genealogy. So I want to leave you with this. Take what you've learned today and start digging. Ask your grandparents about their stories, look up those old records, and see what you find. And when you do, come back and share your discoveries in the comments. Let's build a community of historical detectives piecing together our shared heritage, one surname at a time.